Welcome to Let's Clear the Air, a podcast sponsored by the Allergy, Asthma, and Sinus Center, dedicated to educating listeners about allergies, asthma, and immunology.
Welcome to this episode of Let's Clear the Air, all things allergy, asthma, and immunology. I'm your host, Marcella Feathers, and I have the pleasure of being here with Dr. Cline. Good afternoon, Dr. Cline.
Good afternoon. How are you?
I am doing well, thank you. We are here at the Lenore City office, and we wanted to talk about oral allergy testing, or just specifically the challenge.
Yeah.
And that is for food allergic patients.
Mm-hmm.
And can you just give us a little idea of what that looks like, what that is?
Yeah, perfect. So the oral food challenge is something that we have as an extra tool, and it can both help diagnose definitively food allergy, but more specifically in the way I use it is to help clear food allergies. And so the way that the process typically works is basically trying to consume a serving size of food. So the most common one is something like peanut butter, trying to get to a full serving size in divided doses. And so starting with tiny doses, like usually 1% or 5% or something like that to begin with, and then just gradually doubling the size of the dose every 15 minutes until you reach a full serving size. And then once you reach the full serving size, about an hour of observation after that, and that helps to kind of like, if they do well in that helps to clear the allergy. And I think where that becomes important is there is a lot of false positive testing for foods, unfortunately. So we have a number of patients who, have testing that shows up positive, and they may be able to actually tolerate it. So that's where the food challenge comes into play. And the way that the process, typically works is so if someone comes in and is concerned about the food allergy, we try to do, as targeted as testing as possible. And if the peanut, for example, shows up positive, then checking the blood work to see like what is the level. And so the level doesn't mean you're more or less allergic. It's basically a likelihood ratio. And so if it's less than 2 is kind of the major cutoff for a lot of the common ones. So like milk, egg, and peanut. If it's less than 2, that means that it's likely that they may be able to actually tolerate it, and it may be a false positive. And so that's where the food challenge typically comes into play, which we bring them back in and then perform the food challenge in the way we kind of described, starting with tiny doses and then slowly, like basically doubling the dose every 15 minutes till you get to like a full serving size, which would be, usually like 2 tablespoons of peanut butter or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So just to confirm that there is an actual allergic response happening, because I know some people, myself included, it can be difficult to determine, is it just a sensitivity or is it an actual allergy? Right.
Yeah. So a lot of the things, that's a great question. A lot of the things we're looking for in the food challenge itself are things that we can see. So if it's something, for example, it's like, I feel short of breath, but you're not wheezing, or, I feel funny, or there's no hives, or anything that we can like objectively measure or see, then a lot of times we just continue to go on the food challenge. And so that may, if there's not anything we can see and we get to the very end, then it may put someone in the category of like a food sensitivity or intolerance or something like that. Because usually the allergy is some form of like usually skin, so like hives or flushing or, something like that, plus wheezing or, low blood pressure or something like that we can like objectively see or measure. And I think that's always a good, because we're basically performing it in a controlled environment where we can monitor those things and treat if something were to happen. And if obviously something happens, it just depends on the nature of the reaction. If it's, 2 organ systems or hives plus something else, or whole body hives, then we're treating with epinephrine. Or if it's just a few hives or something like that, or something mild, then we just treat with like an oral Zyrtec or something like that. But it's a nice tool to, like, if someone's goal is to clear the allergy or definitively determine, and we deem it to be safe, it's a nice tool to use. And they use it quite often in research settings, but usually in a double-blinded manner, to where both the doctor and the patient, there may be some placebos in there, to where, okay, if you react, and then we unblind the procedures to open it up and see like, this is actually a placebo. So the things you're experiencing are not, a true reaction and that type of stuff. But what's commonly done in the practice setting is more of like an open challenge. So both the patient and the provider know how much and exactly what type of food that they're eating, obviously. So,
Well, and that would be beneficial because then you don't have to necessarily restrict. When you can go from, oh my goodness, I think I'm allergic, therefore I'm just going to eliminate this, or
Right.
I'm going to ask my child's schoolroom teacher to not have certain things present. But at least if with this type of challenge, you can know for sure before you kind of take those extra steps.
yeah, exactly. And we have a number of patients who, initially get diagnosed with, a sesame allergy or a peanut allergy or something like that. And then, they had a concerning reaction. We continue to monitor the levels over time. And if they're initially over 2, and then we check it longitudinally like every 6 months to a year, and then it comes down to less than 2, that may suggest, okay, now they've outgrown this allergy, and now we can offer a food challenge. And so we have a number of patients who avoided it for years, and now the level has dropped down below 2, and now it's like, okay, do you want to do a food challenge? And either they come in themselves or the parents bring in the child, and then we do the food challenge, and then they get cleared from the allergy and now no longer have to carry EpiPens and tell everybody at a restaurant or airplane and that kind of stuff you're allergic, which is a very freeing and a very satisfying thing when you can remove it from the allergy list, and now you tell patients you don't have to carry your EpiPen. So it is very nice.
And I would much rather be in this environment in a clinical setting with folks who know how to respond in case I am still allergic. They're going to be able to help pull me out of that reaction.
Exactly. And we have a number of patients who are, if they test negative, they've had a reaction and they're concerned about doing it at home. I always offer it, feel free we can do it here in the office in a graded approach. If that makes them feel more comfortable. We have a lot of patients who choose to do that because it can be very concerning if you've been told for years and years and years you're allergic, or you've had reactions and you're like, I'd rather have it done in the safest environment possible. Where we're able to monitor blood pressure, have epinephrine available, and have an expert just kind of like watching you. And usually we're not necessarily like sitting there and staring at the patient the whole time, but checking in on them frequently and just kind of going over at the beginning the things to watch out for, and let us know if something happens, that kind of stuff. But
are there certain ages that you do this for? Can
really any age?
Really?
So as long as they're able to tolerate some form of foods, I think the youngest would be about like 4 to 6 months of age, and then it goes all the way up to 99 to 100. So, and obviously it's not something we do if I deem it to be unsafe. So if it's like you check the skin testing, that's positive, and then the level is over 2, then we're probably not going to touch it. But if it's something to where, even if you're 70 years of age and you've been told that you're allergic to peanut all your life, and now we check the skin test and it's positive and your blood level is less than 2, like it's a 0.5 or something like that, then it's not wrong to do a challenge. You may have been either avoiding it unnecessarily or something like that, and we're able to clear it just by kind of like administering, smaller doses and kind of seeing if we can clear that allergy.
Tolerate it more, so maybe even just like I think you and I were talking beforehand, and you were saying you may be able to go from only eating 1 peanut and having a severe reaction to, okay, if you accidentally take on more than 4 or 5, you're going to be okay. The reaction is a little less
exactly.
severe.
And they have a number of different tools. Like if people are showing up positive to the challenge, like in research settings, they do the double-blinded approaches to where, okay, now they reacted to 1 peanut, and they have different techniques like the oral desensitization, which is like allergy shots for food, essentially. And then they have other tools like Xolair and that type of stuff, which can increase the threshold to where, if I reacted to 1 peanut, now my threshold's increased to 7. And so the challenge can help kind of determine, like, is that allergy there? And if it is there, that we're able to definitively diagnose this and then talk about other options. And in the realm of Xolair, for food allergies, that's a good option to where it's now my threshold has been increased to where in the past I could only eat 1, and now I can eat 10 or 8 or something like that. And if it sneaks its way into a food, I'm not at risk of something happening.
And that's huge, right?
Yeah.
Because then you accidentally ingesting it, it's still maybe life threatening or have a severe reaction. But if soon,
yeah. And where that comes into play too is so for our young ones, and they're now reaching school age and going to birthday parties and on an airplane or at school, and then other children or parents are bringing in these snacks, and then it was not disclosed that there's a peanut or a tree nut in there. I think like being able to know, like, are they truly allergic? Can we clear it? I think the most probably big hang up that I see from a lot of patients is just getting the blood drawn, because that is one step of it, because the skin test is kind of like a plus or minus. It's really good if negative, but if it's positive, it doesn't tell us exactly what that likelihood is. You can kind of base it some off the history, but we do have to have the blood test to see, is the level greater than or less than 2, and then just kind of going from there.
I think it would be worth the minor discomfort.
Yeah.
Now, is this something you can do for all the foods that folks would be
pretty
allergic
much.
to?
Yeah, if
Okay.
there's anything that we have a test for, certainly can. If there's, every now and then we'll get some things where there unfortunately is either not a skin test and not even a blood test for it. Those become a little bit trickier. And if it's something that's kind of more rare, like the food preservatives and stuff like that, that one is, I haven't been able to do any of those, but really anything that's like a food, like I've had plenty of fruits and shellfish and fish and a lot of peanuts and tree nuts and all the kind of more common things, but certainly some of the less common things, like, and have plenty of situations where people are concerned about like some food that may not be a common allergen, but we may have a blood test for and can kind of see. And if the level is 0 or less than 2 and they're like, I'm still not comfortable doing it at home, then it's perfectly reasonable to just bring in a serving size of whatever food it is, and we can challenge anything.
Yeah, well, the knowledge is power
Yeah,
is
exactly.
really a play here.
Yeah.
So do you have, I'm just curious, a success story of a patient who maybe wasn't able to eat something either as a child or an adult, and then eventually...
Yeah, I had, I think it was about 3 or 4 weeks ago, we had one patient who had a tree nut allergy that they had been diagnosed with many years ago. And then the parents had recently learned about food challenges and that type of stuff. And so they had EpiPens and were avoiding and were very afraid to go to restaurants and that type of stuff. And then I had not seen them before, but they had contacted me and said, like, can you do a food challenge? Their tree nut is now showing up negative on a skin test where it showed up positive before. And so we brought them in. They had both the skin test results and the negative blood test results, and brought them in, and he passed with flying colors, went through all the doses, hour of observation afterwards, just was running around playing perfectly fine.
Awesome.
And so we cleared the allergy, and now I told them, like, you don't have to carry an EpiPen, you don't have to avoid these things. You can go forth and have as much of it as you want.
Freedom.
Yeah, so that's it is nice and very freeing to where you don't have to be pinned down by an EpiPen everywhere you go. So it is very, that's probably the most recent success story I've had. So someone that initially was avoiding it for, I think, almost 3 to 4 years and carrying EpiPens, and now don't have to carry anything. So that's very nice.
Fantastic.
And then one of the small rules that we usually do is, and it's just more of like a stylistic thing, just not consuming any more food that same day. So once they complete the challenge, like, as long as the rest of the day goes well, they can resume it back into the diet the next day. And then the other big takeaway is, like, keeping it in the diet as much as possible, like ideally twice a week or more, but at least twice a week or so. So for that patient, it was no more tree nuts that day, but the next day you can go forth and have it at least twice a week going then. And that helps to keep the tolerance and helps to prevent it from becoming an issue in the future, because the more the body sees it, the more it's like, okay, this is not an issue. We like this stuff.
Yeah.
It's not dangerous to us.
I don't have to be afraid or react to this.
Right, exactly.
Very good. Well, that's a positive note to end on. So,
Yeah.
is there anything else that you'd like to add regarding the food?
No, not that I can think of. I think it's a great tool to have, and so that's the reason I wanted to just kind of get the information out there. There's not a lot of places that do it. I've done it, quite a few times, so I have a lot of comfort in it. I think it's just trying to get parents to feel comfort, because it's you've been told you're allergic to something for this long, and now it's like, oh, now we're going to introduce it, but at least it's in a controlled setting. But we can do this to foods, different medications, and that kind of stuff. So I think knowing's part of the tools, and like, you're not necessarily having to avoid it for the rest of your life. There are ways to, like, definitively see or clear it, I think, is kind of the big message here.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
And if anyone is out there listening and has any questions or would like to learn more about this, they can definitely reach out and contact you or any of our providers. So thank you again for your time. And that does it.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. It's informative and helpful. And as we said, could be very freeing for a lot of folks. So
Yeah.
I appreciate it. All right. That does it for this episode of Let's Clear the Air.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Let's Clear the Air. Please consider following this podcast, and remember, if you want helpful and accurate information about allergies and asthma, our allergy experts are here to clear the air.